edition of the Talking About Cars podcast, where it's all about everybody has a car story. Let's indulge in some great car stories from celebrities, car personalities, and we've got a great car personality with us today. You see her. She is NASCAR Majesty. She is part of the Royal Kingdom of NASCAR. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Kelley Earnhardt Miller is joining us live right here from her offices at Junior Motorsports, JRM. Kelley, thanks for joining us here on Talking About Cars.
Yeah, you're welcome. Quite the introduction. I'm here in North Carolina, and yeah, all is well. Can't complain.
And of course, one of the reasons you're here is this. Here it is, and it even looks like you. That's right, your new book called Drive, and it's 9 lessons to win in business and in life. We're going to get some of those lessons from Kelley because I know she has committed them to memory. But I want to start off, first off, with your brother. He raced in Homestead this past weekend. He finished 5th in his race. And tell me a little bit, give me your critique. How did he do?
Oh, I thought he did great. And the thing that I think is funny about Dale is that, this is the one race, for those of you listeners that don't know, he typically just races one race a year at Junior Motorsports for us. And so this was his one race in the middle of this crazy environment where there's no ends, and the way we go to the racetrack is so much different, and the interaction that we are not having right now is so much different. And so he was his typical self, which is funny that well, I don't know, maybe I'll do good, maybe I won't do good. If we come out of there doing well, that's great. If we don't do good, well, okay. So he kind of sets it up so that there's not a lot of pressure and expectation on him. And then during the race, my goodness, he did great, ran in the top 5 all day, looked really competitive, ran second to our teammate Noah Gragson for a long time, and really thought that they had a great car to win, and come down to a late caution, and our cars weren't very good on the short run. So and all in all, he was very happy, very happy.
Now, he's running one race a year. Is that just part of his retirement? He's decided this is the race I'm going to run, and that's it?
Yeah, we have a relationship with Unilever, longtime partners of ours, so the Hellman's Mayonnaise and things like that. And so he has always ran for them. Used to be we would start the season in Daytona with Dale and do that race. And, he's never ran more than a handful of races for Junior Motorsports, our Xfinity team. But in retirement, now that he's out of the car and has his wife and daughter and is doing the NBC broadcasting thing, he just likes to run one. And last year it was in September. This year it was supposed to be in March. However, just ended up having it this past weekend.
So what do you think? Is this going to be his last race, or is he going to try and do another one next year?
He said that after the race, he really had a good time, and that he hopes that he could do another one next year. He kind of leaves it very vague and open, so we never exactly know how he feels until we get him face-to-face in a conversation. So,
all right, very good.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit, of course, everybody's going through the pandemic thing, and one of the things we're always interested in finding out is how people are going through the pandemic. How did it affect you? How did you find out about it, and how did it change your life?
Yeah, it's been quite crazy. If I'm thinking all the way back to March when the pandemic started for us here in North Carolina, and when things started to get crazy and we started shutting businesses down, middle of March, my husband and my son and I, we were all in Pennsylvania. We have a cabin up north in Pennsylvania where my husband's from. And we were planning to spend this Thursday through Sunday at the cabin. And we drove up. We actually, I think, left on a Wednesday night. And then that Thursday, just listening to the news and listening to kind of the fear that started of what was happening and the cases that were coming out and all, we left on Friday from Pennsylvania and drove back to North Carolina because we just didn't know what to expect. It was like at that point they were talking about, were we going to be able to travel state to state? And, we were in Pennsylvania and we felt like we needed to be back in North Carolina. And that Sunday, we made the decision not to come back into work at Junior Motorsports for the safety of our employees, because really there were just so many unknowns. And so those first few weeks were really crazy and dealing with what's happening, what's going on, is life going to end today, right? I mean, nobody knew what was going on. It was like, what are we just going to close our businesses? What was happening? And, each day came with new information. gave you a little bit more comfort as you started, seeing what other people were doing, what businesses were doing, how people were taking the information, what they thought about it, so on and so forth. So, fast forward to now, we're back to work, we're back to racing, although it's not with fans and it's in a totally different way than we're used to doing it. But, it's business as usual for about 60% of our business. We're all in the office. The guys are downstairs working on the race cars here in the shop. And, we're doing what marketing and things like that we can do. But it is very different without our sponsors being at the racetrack, without us being able to host people and host fans. We just don't know how long that's going to last. Personally, it's just, for me, it's just kind of a dumpy time right now. I was so excited to have the book to talk about, and the book came out in April. And so that's been fun because, it's kind of a self-help book and inspirational and hopeful. So has some great messaging in it. But the longer that this pandemic lasts and we're in North Carolina, we're not out of restrictions yet. And so life just feels so strange. It feels restrictive, which it is. And it's not fun. You think about going camping or going on some kind of trip and you think, well, what can we do? Can we go eat in places? Can we go, enjoy things together? So it's been a rough mental time for me in general, just to kind of, navigate through this.
Well, you're also the person that runs the company and used to being in control. And from a psychiatric point of view, I suppose, all of a sudden you're not in control anymore. Yeah,
absolutely. Certainly tons of decisions to make and things like that as we go through each week. But I'm a type A, red, however you want to categorize me kind of person. So I like control. I like to be in charge. And so, yeah, it's kind of nerve wracking that those kinds of things are not within your control, and you're just having to kind of wade through life right now and be at the mercy of other people.
A couple of weeks ago, a track down in North Carolina opened up, and instead of saying they were having a race, they said this was a
protest.
A protest, yeah. How do you feel about that situation?
Well, I'll give a little bit of a text to that. They actually raced 2 weekends prior to that race weekend, and they were seeking guidance from the North Carolina legislature. They were seeking guidance from their local elected officials. The local elected officials said, look, you're not in violation of anything that I can figure out, so there's nothing I can do. I'm not getting the information I need from the North Carolina government, so go about your business. And it became a big deal because the first weekend that they raced, they had 2,500 people in the stands, and so pictures started going all over the place, and people started talking about it. And so it wasn't until that third week that it really became a big deal. And because of what was happening in the world at the time, and people protesting, and we weren't making those people, go back inside, and you were allowed to walk the streets and protest. They did, went ahead and said, okay, well, we're having a protest of our own injustice against the governor, against closing down and not able to run our businesses. And so that got worldwide attention. It was I see different sides of it, but they're great owners up there at Ace Speedway, trying to do the right thing to put their people back to work, to bring some economic power to the county and whatnot. And it's unfortunate, I think, the way that they were depicted and what was shown. I wish we could make those choices as individuals to go and do the things that we feel safe doing. And let people who do not feel as safe make those decisions to stay home or do what they need to do. But anyway, it was a pretty big deal. Actually racing there as well. So in the late model series. So it was a big deal.
Are you guys supposedly wearing masks at all?
We are. So they're not mandated in the state. We are wearing them, and I just put mine on the table over there by my purse. We don't have to wear them in our offices at work, but all of our guys on the shop floor are wearing masks the entire working. We are wearing them in our common areas, asking visitors to wear them if we have visitors. But a lot of business here in North Carolina, we are, one of the states right now that are seeing an increase in cases. So, it's all over the map as to what the masks do and that kind of thing, and preventing us from getting people sick, I guess, is the main point of wearing the mask. So, yeah, it's we're wearing masks. I can't breathe in them. I get so hot. And
Yeah.
I walk the halls, and my guys, I feel so bad for them because, they're out in 90-degree heat, 80-degree heat at the racetrack, and they're wearing them all day. So they're wearing 10 to 16-hour day, hard at work. And so, to me, they are restricted, in a sense of what we can do, but it's part of what we need to do.
Mm-hmm. As the owner, do you get to go out to the races much, or do you have the interest to go out to the races?
Yeah, and so under the COVID environment, we cannot attend the races, very limited amount of folks. So we're typically carrying 40 folks to the racetrack for the 4 teams that we have. We're down to about 20, 22 people. We're allowed 5 people per car. Just recently, they allowed the one owner to come, and we have 3 owners, Mr. Hendrick, myself, and Dale Jr., and we could sit in a suite at the racetrack if we chose to. But typically, I would go to 8 to 10 events in a year. I usually travel to some of the marquee events like the Daytona race that we start the season at, and then different races where our partners are engaging, and I might have responsibilities with them and whatnot. So, but yeah, I like to go. My husband works here at the race team as well, and so we do that kind of thing as a family, and so yeah, we enjoy going.
Are you familiar at all with, and with everything going on, including the COVID thing and the social changes thing? NASCAR is going through a lot of changes as well. I was just curious some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, they've taken some big steps in the recent weeks from the standpoint of inclusion and making people feel comfortable at the racetrack, and so removing the Confederate flags and that kind of thing that they've recently put out. So. I just wish that so many things didn't bother people is the way I would say it. I realize the history of so many different things in our country and what they are, and that they are part of history. And me personally, I don't think back to, I wasn't a part of what that was. So I don't understand it from that standpoint. I understand it from reading it in the books, and I don't think anything of it, but I realize that it bothers people, and I realize that we're in a climate where there's lots of things that are offensive to people, and so if it makes it better for everyone to have less of that and see less of that and do away with things, that's okay with me, because I'm kind of one of those people that want people to be happy and go about life and try not to dwell on those kind of things.
Are you familiar at all with Wendell Scott?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so apparently, for those who don't know, Wendell Scott was the first black driver in NASCAR history who was the first black driver to win a race. However, while he crossed the finish line first, this in Jacksonville, he ended up being called the 3rd place winner, and there was a big protest about that. He protested, and by the time that they realized he won the race, apparently the money was gone, the trophy was gone, and now his family's trying to come back and say, hey, you did give us the money, that's fine, you gave us a trophy, but it wasn't as fancy as the other original trophy. So now they're coming back and saying, well, they want NASCAR to give more of a celebration of his win back in 1963. He passed away in 1990. Are you familiar with that? Do you know if NASCAR would actually do that?
Yeah, I don't. I actually happened to catch a interview with it was either his grandson or his great-grandson, and so I stopped in the house because I had one of the NASCAR shows on, and so I stopped to listen to what he was saying. So I wasn't familiar with the fact that he did win the race. They didn't score him as the winner, and so on and so forth. And the interview that I saw, he was lobbying for NASCAR to give him a trophy, and I'm like, let's give him a trophy, all for it, and he is a member of the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Wendell Scott is, and
he is, yeah.
Very familiar with him because of his spot in the sport and of the historical nature, for Wendell and his family. So, yeah, I'm all for it. I don't know if the celebration or whatever I think being in the NASCAR Hall of Fame is a pretty big deal, and merits the celebration of his spot in the sport and that kind of thing. So but I'm not familiar with, all the ins and outs of it. But I'd say give him the trophy. I have a similar story. My husband was not similar to Wendell Scott, but from a trophy perspective, my husband is a racer and was a champion modified racer. And if you're familiar with NASCAR, there's a huge modified race at Martinsville Speedway. And the 1 year, they offer grandfather clocks. Everybody knows that when you win Martinsville, you get this beautiful grandfather clock to put in your home. And the 1 year that he won the race at Martinsville, no clock. Guess what? So he didn't get a clock. And, and then we met, and then years later, he's telling me this story. He's like, the 1 year I won Martinsville was 2002, and they did not give out clocks then. And so for Christmas 1 year, I was able to work with the racetrack and get him a clock with the 2002 plaque on it. Even though it wasn't the original trophy of the race, he still ended up with his clock.
Now, this is a great wife. There you go.
They're a little bit different.
Good job.
Yeah.
And so you're a racer yourself. You've driven, and you drove quite well, but you got out of the driver's seat.
I did. I drove late model stocks in 1994 through 96, short tracks around North Carolina and the surrounding states, and had a lot of fun with it. Me and Dale and my brother Kerry all shared cars and shared a team called Chance 2, and really had fun with it. But I was in the midst of finishing school. I graduated college in 1995, so I was going to school for a couple years. I had a full-time job, and I always say, looking fast forward to our dad's death in 2001 and setting me up to come and work for Dale Jr. and run his business, I guess God knew all along what he was building me up to be. And that wasn't a racer. That was more on the business side. So I had fun with it. I missed it on occasion. Was lucky to have Danica Patrick drive for Junior Motorsports, which gave me that avenue to kind of live through her and see a female in the sport do good. So, but it's well past my time now. There's no racing in life. Doing this business, it's all good.
But I heard somewhere that you were the best driver in the family.
Well, I just own it now because that's what most people say. So when they're talking about the three of us racing, I'll hear quite often, Kelley was the best out of the bunch, and people said that my dad said that, and so on and so forth. And for the longest time, I was like, yeah, whatever. Dale, if you look at the record books and the statistics, Dale better finishes for an overall standpoint than I did. But, none of us, I didn't ever win in a late model stock car, and Dale only had 3 wins in a late model stock car. And so, we did okay, but I think I was a hard-nosed driver, an aggressive driver, and had a lot of the same qualities as my dad. And so that's why a lot of people, thought that I was a good race car driver and maybe the better of the 3. Dale was very shy, just a shy person in general. He still is. So I think that's a lot of times why they said that.
What about other women in the sport? Team owners, team operators that are female. Are there any, or are there any coming up?
Yeah, on the Cup side, there's a fantastic husband and wife, Jody and Tad Getchecker, who own the number 47 car, Ricky Stenhouse, and I forget who else is driving for them, but they have 2 cars in the field, and Ryan Priest is the other driver. And so, Jody is very involved in the sport and very looked up to from a female perspective. And I get asked about it all the time. There's quite a few females in the sport, particularly in like the marketing and the PR roles and that kind of thing. But, when you look at the top levels of leadership in terms of NASCAR and team owners and drivers, we're a small minority. There's some great Joe Gregory with NASCAR. There's some great women here who are, laying down the path, but certainly still, kind of a minority in the whole scheme of things.
So we always like asking our guests, first off, what was your first car?
My very first car was a junkyard Volkswagen that my dad went down the street when I was just a teen before I had my license. And I loved we had a motorcycle, drive a motorcycle. We had a little yard cart, drove that. And so he went down to a friend's junkyard here in Mooresville and picked me out this beater of a Volkswagen. It's kind of a burgundy purplish color. And And so he let me drive that around the farm on our logging roads at the time. So first cars. My first real car, though, once I got my license, I got a 1987 fastback Monte Carlo SS,
I
which
can understand that.
I loved the Monte Carlo SS aspect of it. I was not a fan of the fastback. It just made this car really long and bulky, and I felt like I was driving a hearse at times. And my dad said that was to protect me. He wanted as much sheet metal around me as possible.
That makes sense. I get that. I get that.
So, yeah.
And then later, apparently, you found a Chevy. He got a Chevy Cavalier for you, which was a little better.
It was. So for my 16th birthday was the SS. Then my graduation, I got a Chevy Cavalier, which I talk about in the book. Fun car. Love that car. From college, I got a dream car. I got an IROC. Okay.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Chevy Camaro IROC. Was super excited about that. Then my dumb self traded it for a Chevy Blazer. Not that, but I mean, I had a sports car. Like, what was I thinking? And
We'd all do it. Yeah.
we all do it, right? Y'all make that
Mhm.
one mistake that you're like, why did I ever trade for that one car? But now I live my life in Tahoes and Suburbans and long cars.
So what's the one car you would like to get back if you could? Was it that IROC or would it be something else?
Yeah, I think it'd be the IROC. Just such a fun car. I mean, I've got some fun cars now on a daily basis. I drive a Tahoe, but I've got a 1972 Volkswagen that my husband gave me for my 40th birthday, kind of, tribute back to the Volkswagen of the old days. And I've got an awesome 2002 Chevy Camaro Intimidator, which were being built when my father, in 2001, they had a 83 Intimidator sold. And then they stopped making them when he passed. And so I was able to tag along to the back end and get one, thankfully. And so I have number 84 and love that car, love the power that it has, and such a fun thing to drive. It's a stick, so it's a lot of fun to drive. And I just recently inherited from my father-in-law a Buick that he allowed us to. I'm sitting here going to talk about it, and the name's going to escape me. Buick Riviera, 65 Buick Riviera.
Oh, okay.
Ooh, that was
So
disappearing
yeah, when I was
headlights.
married, almost 10 years ago, he let us drive that car as going away from the wedding car.
Mhm.
I just always loved it. So sleek and big, and I'm a fan of the big cars. Like my dad had a 65 Chevelle, Impala, blue, ice blue. It was the stick was on the steering column there. So I was always a fan of those kind of cars. So the Riviera I love, and my father-in-law just let us bring it. He always told me that it was mine, but it was still in Pennsylvania all these years. And he just let us bring it down to North Carolina, so it's officially mine now.
Ooh, okay.
It gets so many cool looks. I love it.
Tell me something, and I've noticed this with the NASCAR. North Carolina seems to be the hub for NASCAR.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
Well, I think that, a lot of the roots of the sport around here, like my grandpa, Ralph Earnhardt, based in the 50s and 60s. And so, Junior Johnson, the adage is that NASCAR was born out of the moonshine days and running moonshine. And so a lot of that happened here in North Carolina. And so the Junior Johnsons of the world that were some of the pioneers of the sport is just where kind of the sport got its footing here in the South. And so I guess that's kind of why it became a hubbub of we call our city, Mooresville, North Carolina, is Race City, USA. And 90% of the teams are right here within a 30 or 40 mile radius.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's pretty
Wait.
nice. And of course,
Yeah.
they're all in that certain area. Everybody has a car that they want someday. They're looking longingly at from a distance. Now, of course, you have that Riviera, so that may counteract
That's a pretty
everything
good
I'm
one.
about to ask.
Yeah.
But top 3 cars that are out there that you would like one day to own or
Oh,
drive.
gosh. Well, my father-in-law has, and my dad had a lot of cars. My brother has a fair amount of cars. My father-in-law probably has about 80 old cars. And I've really probably learned more about all types of cars in the marriage with my husband than I did really before, because we were a Chevy family. So it was like, I didn't look past anything but a Chevy, right? And so I've gotten a lot more knowledge about cars and looking at old cars. And he has some really cool cars that maybe one day will be in my collection. But it's probably, I guess, a 30s or 40 model where they have the seat that's in the
rumble seat. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are pretty cool. I've always wanted a General Lee. I'm a huge Dukes of Hazzard fan. I know that's kind of crazy to talk about in today's times, but the horn, I mean, you can't get past. Bum, 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 bum. And the jumps that car could make,
Well,
yeah. I mean, come on. Who doesn't want to set that up?
Spoiler alert. I believe they used a lot of cars to create one or two jumps. I just wanted
They did. That's what, yeah. So if you ever look online, you can see supposedly junkyards of General Lees, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Cars that they used. But
I'm proud of you there, Kelley. I mean, you actually said something nice about a Mopar being from a Chevy.
Right?
I'm proud of you. That's
Randy
really good.
Randy's a Mopar guy.
I'm also a Pontiac guy. And,
gosh, if you think back about it, there's just so many cool cars, especially from, obviously muscle cars and from long ago. But, to me, they don't build as many cars, make as many cars. They're just not as robust as the lineups used to be when it comes to cars. Everybody's now is into saving gas and,
boo, boo.
things, right? Yeah, I know, right? So, to me, like a car is a car. Like, I want some meat in the car and
there you go.
Some robust, so, but.
Well, your cars are hybrids. They burn rubber, gas, and oil.
That's right.
That's it.
They do.
That's it. All right.
They do.
You came on to talk about the book. You've been very nice to work with us here so far. And so let's talk about the book right here, Drive, Kelley Earnhardt Miller.
Yep.
It is a 9 lessons to win in business and in life. Let's just get right to the meat of the matter. You have a photographic memory?
I do.
When did you know?
Gosh, when I was a kid. My dad used to, say, what's such and such's phone number? And I could just roll it right out. And he was always like, how can you remember all those numbers? But I can remember addresses and numbers and all of those kinds of things. Going through school, which I attribute a photographic memory to not learning quite as much because I didn't have to study. I could read a paragraph and take a test the next day or a week later. And I basically could see the words on the paper and just get through my test. But it wasn't as much absorption as probably I could have used going through college. But I kind of just used that memory to get by, so to speak. But it served me well, and all that's well and good. And I don't even need to know half the stuff we learned in college because I never use it. College, I think, is about accountability and reliability and dependability and learning, how to do what people tell you and all those kinds of things. It's not
okay. So let's talk a little. Well, we now know she's got a photographic memory. So let's talk a little bit about some of the lessons here. Give me a couple of really good lessons that you learned about business.
Yeah, I think a couple that stand out to me, and this wasn't always one of the forefronts, but leading from the heart has become really important to me. I was a hard-nosed leader in the very beginning. I didn't have kids. I was single. I was like, there was no excuses to not come to work and work hard and do a good job. But I have found that leading a group of people, leading by the heart, has been something that's very important to me. Aiming for the win-win, super important in this sport. One of the things that my dad really supported, and I can just hear him saying and ingrained in us was, particularly from a NASCAR perspective, we are driven by sponsorship for the most part. And so coming up with situations that work for the sponsor and work for the team and making that a win-win to try to have a longer sustaining relationship instead of just looking at situations as what's in it for me. You don't ever get really far if you do that very long. So, but there's lots of great things in here: managing your emotions, being approachable, a lot of things that I really struggled with through my childhood, and then coming into business, really learned the value of them and why they were important.
Talk a little bit about a couple of lessons in life that really stick with you.
One of the things that I think is important is just, hitting situations head on and honest. You can't really go wrong being honest.
Doing the right thing.
Yeah, doing the right thing. I mean, you can be judged and this, that, and the other, but if you stand on your convictions and you're honest and you do the right thing, it'll work out in the wash.
And timing. Timing is important.
Yeah, timing is important. And do we ever know the right time? I think that a lot of times you just going with your gut, going with your heart, doing the due diligence, going through things and it'll work out.
Very good. Bob, do you have any other questions there?
No, you read the book. I'm just interested in the racing part.
Well, one thing I noticed though, there are absolutely no pictures in this book, Kelley. What happened?
Oh, well, I asked about that. So in Delaware, we worked with the same publisher, and I said, so when are y'all going to ask me for the pictures? And she said, well, honey, your book doesn't have pictures in it. And I was like, why not?
Yeah.
So yeah, autobiographies have pictures in them. And so apparently mine's not autobiography enough, even though we have the first 4 chapters in part 1 about growing up as Dale Earnhardt's daughter and whatnot, more of a business book. But I still think it could use pictures. I think it'd be fun.
Come to think of it, I don't know.
My social channel. Anyway, I should just do that.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, it's just a suggestion.
I know.
We're talking to Kelley Earnhardt Miller, who, of course, has the new book, Drive, 9 Lessons to Win in Life and Business. Go out, get this book. In fact, when I read it, I was just glued to it because I'm always absorbing these life lessons, things I can do life better. It's always interesting. Check it out. You're going to like it. And Kelley, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, don't forget, by the way, you guys, listen to our audio podcast on radio.com and knx1070.com. Watch our video podcast now on our new Two Tired Guys Productions channel. You can see Hot Rod Bob with, of course, his gas show, Great American Auto Scene. Of course, Bob, we all know what your introduction is to your show.
I'm Hot Rod Bob, and you've got gas.
I live with this every day. That's what it is. Don't forget, subscribe to both. You'll get all of our shows. Follow us on social media. Become a Two Tired Guys patron. See exclusive videos and get some swag as well. Until next time, I'm Randy Cardoon for Hot Rod Bob and Kelley Earnhardt Miller. Join us next time as we have some fun talking about cars. See you later, everybody.